Welcome everyone to ICUJP's Friday Forum. We're very pleased to have everyone here well, I was about to say in person, but virtually, and all of you who are watching this program in a recording. We appreciate anybody who comes to join us, if they're able to join us on Friday mornings by Zoom, or watch these programs later when they are posted on the ICUJP website. We've got a very interesting program for today, and we'll be getting into that shortly. ICUJP has been doing this work for 24 years. We've been meeting every Friday morning, either in person or online, under the mission that religious communities must stop blessing war and violence. We've had over 1,000 webinars and still counting. We hold public events. John Crampner mentioned the closed Guantanamo rally. We hold it every January. I didn't want to say in commemoration, in shameful commemoration of the opening of Guantanamo Bay. And we are holding other events throughout the year in this period of defending democracy. We do all that work with a very small budget, as I alluded to a moment ago, a very tiny part-time paid staff, but we do it because it matters and because we believe ICUJP, supported by the kinds of organizations you've heard from this morning, we are built for this work. We are built for speaking truth to power and pushing back. But that does require resources. So in the announcement you received, bringing you here this morning, as well as on the ICUJP.org website, there are an array of ways to financially support our work. I'm always prone to be reminded of a wonderful Rabbi, Leonard Bierman, a founder of ICUJP, who stood before his congregation one day and he said, "We have all the money we need. We just need to transfer it from your pocket to ours." So we hope that you'll find among the list of your most important causes and organizations a small place for ICUJP. We depend on the kindness of strangers and friends. And if you learned something today, if you believe we've brought to you important guests and we're doing important work, then please be as generous as you can. Ruby, please present your reflection for this morning.
All right. Yes. The purpose of a reflection is to enjoy and learn from an experience by analyzing past events, identifying patterns, while developing insights to improve future actions and decision making. A reflection can foster self-awareness and enhance problem solving, promote personal professional growth, and by reconnecting thinking and just doing to go forward. Now, I thought about our digital age that we have now, which Heidi's going to be speaking about and everything. And this is where we are now. And we can just check in the past ages from errors, that things that we can usually learn from, and the types of things that gave us energy, which we can use now in understanding how historical areas and ages are defined and all that we can do, and the importance of the reflection and of being able to utilize the past energy and the cultures, the world cultures, and all that has been past and different. We can still see and find from the main periods of history and prehistoric, classical, Middle Age, early modern, and modern eras, something important that was a part of that time. And so, geological speaking, we're also living in a powerful age right now. And this powerful age is one that we can just work with for our children in using all of the different areas. And the basic thing is that there were and still are 5 things that no matter what it is, what age of time, what it is, the power that we need, that we will have, that will work through all things. And I'm talking about the 5 top things, no matter what time it will be, what space, the future, everything. One is oxygen, one is water, no matter the nationality, the color, the religion, everything needs that. Food, adequate food intake provides the necessary calories and nutrients. Shelter, protection from the allergens, and the 5th is sleep. So all nationalities, all colors, all religions, no matter what, needs these 5 basic things for survival. And with this, we can go forward with positive trade, no matter what. So when you think of what's happening with the wars and the other things, we know that we can, come to a time and realize that these 5 areas in our lives will always be there for us to go forward into. And when other nationalities have a need, that we can go forward with positive trade, no matter what. So this is what we call releasing war and going forward into just a positive joy and light and love.
Thank you, Ruby. Thank you. Thank you for reminding us of things we take for granted in our lives that are being denied to people around the world, either through terrible natural disasters or the disaster of human cruelty and militarism. Uh, I'm really so proud and pleased to introduce our guest speaker today. Um, I've often said that all of us are in this struggle for peace and justice, and we've followed different paths to get to where we are and to get to where we're going. We may not, as Dr. King said, all be there when we achieve peace and justice. So it's the journey itself that matters. It's the people you meet along the way. And that's how I feel about Heidi Boghosian. Um, I was honored to be invited to be a summer host on Law and Disorder. Law and Disorder is this extraordinary radio program that Heidi and Jim Lafferty, who's well known to this group, and their colleague Michael Smith, and a beloved friend of all of ours, Michael Ratner, who I went to Columbia Law School with, who was instrumental at the Center for Constitutional Rights, and we lost him too young a few years ago. But Heidi and that crew had the vision of a radio show that would speak truth to power. Law and Disorder is now on 200 radio stations. You folks remember radio, that little box that you dialed and listened to. But Law and Disorder is now a podcast as well. And a couple of years ago, I spent a lovely summer being a alternate co-host, and in a collective act of disillusion. They invited me to be a permanent co-host, and it's been an extraordinary experience to be part of Law and Disorder. But that's only one of Heidi's accomplishments. You've heard some of it already. Her she's speaking today about cyber citizens saving democracy with digital literacy, but her earlier books are Spying on Democracy and I Have Nothing to Hide. Her writings have appeared in the LA Times, the Philadelphia Inquirer, the ABA Human Rights Journal. She's on the advisory board of the Georgetown Center on Privacy and Technology and the Media Freedom Foundation, as well as the work she mentioned previously. Today, Heidi's going to make a presentation, share some slides. Then she and I are going to engage in a little conversation to explore her new book. And then I have warned her that this group loves questions and answers and is very curious and inquisitive, and we'll turn to our questions and answers. So, literally, without further ado, Heidi Boghosian.
Thank you, Steve, for your kind words. It's really been an honor to work with you on Law and Disorder. Before Rick kindly uploads my 9 or 10 slides that I prepared, trying to summarize the book in a nutshell, I wanted to mention that this book actually began as a book on hacktivists, and no publisher found that interesting enough. So fortunately, Beacon Press encouraged me to expand it into its current format. But why I was so interested in hacktivism, or basically hackers who are activists, largely for social justice, was because when I was at the National Lawyers Guild in around 2008 to 2013, we saw acts of hacktivism and the rise of Anonymous. And I got to know one hacker, Jeremy Hammond, who was harshly sentenced to 10 years in prison for hacking and then uploading communications from the intelligence firm Stratfor. And he revealed that it had dossiers and had been monitoring the communications of activists around the country, including Occupy Wall Street around 2012. For that, he was sentenced to prison. But when I got to know Jeremy and read more about him, he in college was also expelled for hacking into a university-wide in Chicago computer system, and exposing the vulnerabilities to the leadership of the university, trying to let them know that they were subject to being hacked again by military or by malicious hackers, who wanted to maybe, now what we see with the rise of ransomware, would be expose the university to, bribery or theft. And he was expelled. And I met with him several times in prison and saw what a really kind, altruistic person Jeremy was. And I thought, this just doesn't make sense that we have a group of individuals who are so expert at navigating online systems, really understanding the vulnerabilities and the threats to all of us by organizations, school districts, and other large entities that do not properly secure their own cyber systems. Makes us all vulnerable to additional intrusions by malactors. And then I started to read more about other hacktivists who were really harshly punished, and I'm sure Rebecca knows this, uh, because often the court systems and the lawyers representing them really didn't know that much about technology or understand their motivations to perform what I see as a public service when so many of the rest of the population really don't know about what I call digital, many call digital hygiene, and of course, digital literacy. So that made a lot of sense to me in writing Cyber Citizens because I thought we have to close that knowledge gap as we've so quickly, with the release of smartphones in 2007, and of course with the internet, which someone else mentioned, you know, I think it was Dr. Ruby, um, brought us together in wonderful ways after, for example, the attacks of 9/11, to share information for people who were trying to find out about loss of loved ones or where to go for more information. And we've seen that, of course, morph into quick seizures by big tech and the government to really try to own or exercise dominion over our use of the internet, which I'll talk about in a minute. So that motivation brought into stark contrast for me the really urgent need for us to become knowledgeable as so-called cyber citizens. Uh, to define cyber citizens, we have rights that we expect from the overlords of our tech world, big tech. And really, they're the same democratic principles that we are supposed to expect from government: due process, accountability, privacy, fairness, free expression, and public interest governance. Our responsibilities, in turn, are that we are knowledgeable, possess the skills and behaviors needed to navigate the internet safely, respectfully, and effectively. So on the next slide, I try to sort of compartmentalize what I deal with in the first section of the book, which is decline in civics education around the nation, with the startling fact that only 1 in 3 Americans can pass a multiple choice test that was based on the US citizenship test, which requires a passing score of 60. That decline has come about in part, well, largely because of the introduction of standardized testing in the 1960s and a shift toward more not only standardized testing and rote memorization, but as I'll discuss later, a rise in military type training or training in schools that emphasizes a hierarchical sort of deference to authority. On the next slide, flunking digital literacy, which is another chapter in the book. One test in 2019 found that respondents can reliably identify suspicious material online. Only 7% of those tested got an A and were able to answer 8 or 9 questions correctly. 3/4 of millennials scored an F. Well, older respondents actually scored a little better than those millennials who we generally think of as more web savvy. And that represents a downward trend, according to the group MindEdge, who did this test over the last 2 or 3 years. That does not bode well for how we operate as responsible cyber citizens online. On the next slide, we look at the effect of bad digital hygiene. And basically, digital hygiene are the habits that we should be using on a daily basis to protect our data, which in turn affects everyone's security online. Nearly 40% of us reuse passwords. Almost half prioritize ease over security. And that's really a trend that advertisers, big tech take advantage of. We've seen how we've quickly really moved online to perform most of our daily activities, including financial activities. 41% have shared their passwords with friends and family, and 62% only change them when they're forced to. Uh, Many don't use screen locks. A few don't install phone updates, which is very important. More than half use public Wi-Fi, which is insecure. And a whopping 20% do that for sensitive tasks, such as financial information or other personally identifiable information that we share. If you're at an airport, for example, and you send emails containing that information. General practice is more than half skip reading privacy policies, which are designed so. They're multi-page, small font, and we really don't have a choice if we want to avail ourselves of those services. But over a quarter use, only 28% use two-factor authentication, very easy to set up, and a quarter delay updating their apps until they're required to do so. The next slide shows some of the dangers of poor hygiene, which many don't really think that our individual actions can affect cybersecurity on a national or international realm, but that's false. 64% have experienced data breaches, and the cost of those, especially to businesses, but also individuals, is enormous. Identity fraud victims, weak stolen passwords are behind about a third of data breaches. These strain our emergency and our critical infrastructure. I say a weakness in one is a weakness in all. But the good news is we are seeing progress. Nearly half of individuals using the internet have improved their password hygiene. That happened a lot after COVID and during. Many are using multi-factor authentication, and many are more aware of things like phishing scams, where an individual will sort of try to mask their identity but send you an attachment. Never open an attachment from someone you do not know, as tempting as it may be. Next slide. The summary, maybe the crux of this, is that failing civics, failing digital literacy, and hygiene results in a disaster for democracy. It leads to voter manipulation through algorithmic targeting and misinformation spread online. Public discourse deteriorates, drowned out by virility over veracity. So you'll see that algorithms feed you sort of shocking headlines because that increases our engagement. As humans, we're drawn toward, the Jeffrey Epstein drama over passing legislation on an obscure act. And as a result, trust in institutions tends to erode, reduced by tribal loyalty over apathy, and civic engagements declines. People become numb, disillusioned, distracted, or digitally disoriented. How many emails are you getting from different sites with pundits sharing their viewpoints every day? I'm inundated, and I just don't read most of them. I pick the ones that I can skim and that are relevant to me. On the next slide, and this is in section 2 of the book, I focus on 5 threats to democracy. Mega think tanks, which I kind of liken to the mega church phenomenon in this country. But these think tanks are shaping public policy, doing so behind closed doors. They are really taking the lead in crafting legislation statewide and shaping regulation toward corporate and their ideological interests. Advertising technology monetizes surveillance. It manipulates our behavior and our discourse. Tech overlords, the powerful platforms that control the public square, distorting speech, again through algorithms, access, and accountability. Surveillance by both state and private entities, which chills dissent, even though we may not be aware of it, and enables ad tech and other manipulations to really guide us. And we see hate shifting online as extremist movements exploit platforms, often disguising their true identities to recruit, organize, and spread more disinformation, often cloaked as patriotism or religion, religious beliefs. Next slide. So, what I talk about in the third section of the book is practices for the people. I have a chapter on what I call disruptors for democracy, open source software, blockchain, whistleblowers, online activists finding creative ways to engage civically and motivate others for positive social change. The GDPR, the European regulations that are slowly bringing the United States into alignment with best practices, giving us choices whether we want to enable cookies to follow our every move or to limit. I call them digital literati. We're becoming more digitally literate, perhaps too slowly. Cyber hygienists are those practitioners of good cybersecurity, and many are using memes for social justice, crowdsourcing, viral marketing, social media campaigns online to really help activate renewed citizenry. And there's also games for democracy, educational tools that many schools and parents are using that are fun for children, but can be an essential component of educating new generations. And I think finally, my last slide or two. My last chapter is called Cyber Sparks, and it's again inspiring action. I talk about the new Paul Revere's. Many were those hacktivists warning of danger early on that we didn't listen to. I emphasize the power in numbers and the different ways that places, schools, community groups, and at-home parents and families are training cyber citizens, and also a kind of regulation revolution that's happening slowly, holding big tech accountable. So that's a nutshell summary of the book. I think Steve will focus on some of these aspects in our Q&A, but I want to thank you so much and feel free to contact me at my email if you have any questions. I'm learning this as I'm going along. I think we all need to look at this as a work in progress.
Wow, Heidi, thank you so much. The efficiency of your presentation is a measure of how engaging your book is and how important this entire topic is. Among your multitasking, Rick, if you could put a link to the announcement of Heidi's book uh, and Beacon Press and how how folks can find the book and purchase it, read it, study it, and use it. Um, just a couple thoughts that were prompted by your opening remarks. Um, are there good hackers and bad hackers? Are you making the point that in the gentleman you mentioned being prosecuted, very little attention was given to his intent, his motivation, why he was what he was doing in the public interest? Do the courts even allow those considerations that the very same act here he's trying to demonstrate to a university its vulnerability. He's not trying to destroy that university. So does altruism come in, and how have the courts analyzed that?
I wrote an op-ed called Cyber Courts. And in that op-ed, I made that distinction of courts not and prosecutors not taking into consideration the altruistic motivations, especially when it impacts or has the potential to impact all of our cybersecurity. And as I mentioned briefly, critical infrastructure, which is along with most government systems, many corporations are daily inundated with attacks to get at our personal data. I mean, I've started receiving letters and email notifications, and I'm sure many of you do, notifying me of data breaches, sometimes for an entity that I might have signed up with 5 years ago to order something online. And our data is stored and vulnerable. And I also want to add, before I continue with cyber courts, that when I go to a local hospital in New York, one of the biggest hospitals, they have now partnered with Amazon One and collect your palm scan. I just got another notice today saying sign up for the palm scan, easier, faster registration. And I've said on numerous occasions, I do not want to give my palm scan because biometrics can be hacked, and they have been hacked. And I can't replace that palm. It's unique to me. And I'm writing a letter to that hospital, to their privacy department, saying you need to train the people at the desk. Most of them have been great about giving an alternate way to sign in. But one person gave me a hard time and said, and disagreed with me, but I refused. And I tried refusing at airports until it became impossible to avoid taking a facial scan, which is out there anyway on many sites. But I think that we need to become savvier so we don't willingly turn over that information. And in this, back to the cyber courts, I think we need to realize that probably most hackers are nefarious or wanting to profit off stealing data and then say offering to sell it back to a hospital system for money because if you don't, we'll shut down your entire systems. We see this in school districts happening
Black,
across the nation. So,
blackmail.
yes, blackmail. And I urge a sort of panel of tech experts and others who understand that small but important number of what we call hacktivists who are doing this to educate the institutions whose data is vulnerable and ultimately to protect us. Now, in the case of Jeremy Hammond, he was revealing that activist organizations like all of ours, some of them were under surveillance by this firm and also, as we now know, by Department of Homeland Security and other entities. Now, should he be punished? Perhaps. I would say the punishment should be loaning his services for a year or two to either small nonprofits to educate them or work with the government. But it's an issue that hasn't taken hold.
I've often worried about the temptation of convenience. The temptation of convenience. Um, Give us your data and we'll store it. So the next time you come here, you can just click and we'll have your credit card number and your personal information. So, do you think there is a temptation of convenience, and how can average folks resist that?
The temptation of convenience is built in to most of the applications we interact with online. And again, human nature, we love a shortcut. We get mesmerized by online interactions. And that, not only our devices, which ping us, if you set it up to do so, every time you get an email or a message, uh, we, it's been described as sort of like slot machine interaction, where we're used to immediate gratification. I can go online and buy something and it will be delivered to me, in the next day or two if I buy it on Amazon. Um, I think that's human nature. And then we get excited by being able to interact immediately and have instant gratification that way. It's very hard not to, when you're trying to find information online, not to succumb to that temptation of, for example, signing up for apps. I do not like apps, but I have several because life necessitates it, whether it's health, uh, not so much financial, but other relationships that I have with entities online. If you download an app, make sure to download it from the actual source and not another source. And that's the other thing. When you do a search online, and now we have artificial intelligence feeding us a summary before we get to the list of, say, even, you know, restaurants online. I find that very annoying. Um, but many malactors will imitate or feed you something that's similar but not identical to what you actually want. So make sure you get it from a reliable source. And I would limit apps because I see apps as being a portal into more a gathering, as you say, Steve, of our private information. Never put your social security online, with the exception probably of the Social Security Department. I never give it on forms when asked. Um, and I've never had anyone question that. So I think we need to be aware first of how many times a day we are literally handing over personal information for the sake of convenience. And the algorithms that you're fed reinforce all of that manipulation through convenience.
And on that score, would you say we should learn? I'm thinking of this whole question of posting data and then reusing it, but it's already been posted. Maybe we need to recognize we are going to spend a little more time um, using online services by not depending on posting our private data permanently. And we may have to input data each time we use a service. But all of life has a cost, and I think we're paying a price for convenience. And so, do you try? Are there in your digital hygiene um, and in your book, are there habits and ways of living that resist convenience for the sake of our own privacy and the privacy of those around us?
It definitely takes additional work. Um, there are basic things that people can do. I mean, multi-factor authentication, for one, I think is the easiest. In terms of passwords, in the past I've shared passwords, and I've used my different dogs' names and year of birth as a password. I check a great,
And and you've now told the world, since this is being recorded,
but
that
I don't do that anymore.
oh,
In
good, good.
fact, my favorite website now is I've been pawned, PWNED. And I'll put that on my website. It tells you can put in your phone number, your email, and it will tell you how many times it has been either sold on the dark web or compromised. So now I don't use my pet names. I use short phrases, something that's easy to remember. When I grew up, my parents loved the poem, I Had a Little Nutshell. I don't use that anymore, but I might pick something like that. Um, I think one thing I always advise is don't join, if you go to the coffee shop and they want a loyalty card where you'll get 10 coffees and then you get a free cappuccino at the end. I don't join anything like that. I don't make it easy for them to find out more about me. It's hard, but I think the first step is awareness. And then once you're aware, I think you'll find there might be areas that you personally are like, I can do something about this. It won't take that long. Let me start incorporating it into uh, my life. And strong filters, spam filters, privacy settings, things that are not hard to set up initially. Why not do that? It can change your life.
So let's broaden the conversation to some of the things you warn us about in the book. Um, you believe that digital illiteracy is actually a national security threat, and that tragedies like Sandy Hook and Parkland have been weaponized. Tell us about that.
So, as I mentioned before, sensational headlines pervade the internet, just as they pervade tabloids, the news. And the reason is it engages people, and then you can be fed similar items and topics uh, that kind of reinforce that. And with many, there's forms of disinformation in those. So, for example, in the tragic school shootings, a couple of conservative bloggers posted incorrect information calling some of the school students who then spoke out against it and urged authorities to, enlist gun laws. These conservative pundits called them so-called crisis actors, i.e., people who were being paid by the liberals to sort of promulgate regulations that they disfavored. And for many of those families, some of them were in real life very harmed by that, if not physically, definitely emotionally. So uh, I think that we've become, in part, a society where the very good values of the World Wide Web, the internet, that the creators espoused, sharing information for the benefit of all, has been perverted into manipulating by powerful actors information like those tragedies, which everyone reads about, into trying to shift attitudes to make the very victims, to vilify them. And I think that's detrimental over a range of issues. But I think that we've seen the internet, and iPhones or smart devices with cameras, we've all sort of become our own, if we want to, reporters or news disseminators. And we've seen a weakening in the legacy media, first being purchased by people like Jeff Bezos, who his responsibility as owner of Amazon is to uh, seek greater profits. And I think that as we see a lessening of independent news and more media conglomerates vying to feed us information that may not always be impartial or accurate, um, that contributes to our collective digital and cyber illiteracy. So I think if we want our democracy to continue on a positive trajectory, we have a responsibility. If we own a device and use it, unless we're living off the grid in the wilderness, we all have a responsibility, a moral responsibility to look after each other.
In the book, I think you've coined the phrase mega think tanks and the dangers associated with them. You talk about ad tech. Tell us about all that.
Yeah, I just want to, so ad technology, I want to look at my notes for a sec. Uh, it's the tools and the systems that these companies and others use. That includes behavioral tracking through cookies, which hopefully everyone is aware of now. And thanks to the European Union's general protection regulation, uh, privacy regulation, the GDPR, uh, is starting to sift into US culture. More awareness of what cookies do and more uh, ability to exercise our choices online. I believe that ad tech is a big factor in undermining technology. It's a privacy invasion. It tracks our movements all across the web, often without our consent. And it creates what data aggregators use, behavioral profiles, so that we can be marketed individually. It amplifies misinformation. It market distortion. For example, Google is now, I think, the largest advertiser online. Their dominance crushes smaller business, local institutions. There's political uh, manipulation. If you recall the Cambridge Analytica scandal of years ago when Facebook sold personal information of voluminous information of users to Cambridge Analytica in the UK, and they used it to try to sway voters in the United States presidential election. And then also there's a civic erosion because advertising driven culture shifts us from the notion of being citizens first into being consumers first. And I did a little research on the use of the word consumers when referring to Americans versus citizens, and consumers pretty high up there. Uh, so I think that also ad tech over the years has distracted us from our obligations. And I think that with the introduction of the marvelous tech devices from 2007 on that we all own and use, we we love them, but we haven't really learned the responsibilities that accompany owning and using them. And so I think ad tech is a big part of that consumer culture. We'd rather buy than write to our Congress people, for example.
Mm. Let's begin to talk about solutions as well, not to make this entirely depressing and hopeless. Uh, you just mentioned the EU's General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. Uh, what is it? What can we learn from it? Are there any drawbacks if we mechanically applied those regulations in the American context, particularly given constitutional protections for freedom of expression and our how allergic we are to government censorship and government control? So tell us first about GDPR and then assess it for us in the US context.
First, people should know that the US does not have a federal privacy law. So our laws around the country are really patchwork. They vary by state. Some, like California, your state, has excellent privacy protections. I think Illinois is another leader. But we also do it by sectors. So HIPAA in the health sector, other areas may have their own regulations. In the European Union, they wisely, I think, decided that they needed a more uniform set of regulations. So I think it was in 2018 they enacted their privacy regulations. And what they basically aim to do in a general sense is restore ownership and control of personal identifying data, social security numbers, birth date, other identifiers, back into the hands of the users, where they should be, and away from big tech and other entities. The good news is the United States, because if a US corporation does business in the European Union, they have to adopt these policies. One that everyone has seen is the cookies banners that those entities have to display when you get to their website. So many people dismiss that to quickly get to the website, going back sort of to the theme of convenience and rapidity to get to where we want to be with our shortened attention spans. And the good news is that many sites are making those cookie banners more user-friendly because many of them are confusing. They'll have a little button that will say, for example, essential only, but you can't really tell if that button is on or off, so you don't know. Some are getting better. The ideal banner should say, if you want, technical necessary cookies only, click here. All of the rest of your information will not be tracked. But I think advocacy groups are moving to have something as simple as that, seemingly simple, that actually has a huge effect on who sees your data and how it's shared, whether to aggregators or other marketers. I think that another benefit of the GDPR is that it has helped raise Americans' consciousness about who is buying and selling our personal data without our permission, and the need for us to do the cookies choice, but also do things like enacting some basic protocols like the privacy settings on your devices, but also things like using Signal or other products that are not 100% guarantee that the government won't subpoena that information, but it greatly reduces your risks all around. So we see people messaging privately, some messaging devices, the messages may disappear. And that is part of reducing what's kind of like a target board of vulnerabilities, of openings that on a daily basis we may be offering up to malactors. Let's find ways we close those openings or limit them. And I think the GDPR has really raised public awareness of how our data is being used inappropriately.
Can you break down the EU's regulations and how do they work? What requirements do they impose on websites, businesses, and users um, to give us a sense of that one legislative remedy and whether it's a model that we could borrow from and or uh, use or adapt to the American system as well?
So I have to look at my notes here. First, it's difficult to say whether the United States can adopt that because we don't even have general privacy laws on the books. Um, I personally believe that big tech's relationship with government here is so entwined that leaders may think it might harm that relationship and the interprofitability, the reliance of government on big tech, and vice versa, which you can look at in the number of antitrust lawsuits that have been filed over the last decade. And, you know, there have been a few successes, but when you look at what Google, for example, may have to pay out for an infraction, uh, to them it's pennies of their billions of dollars in profits. Um, the GDPR applies uniformly across all EU member states. The new rights it introduces are the right to be forgotten, uh, meaning the ability to have your data, personal data that might have been shared 10 years ago, taken off. Stricter standards for consent, i.e., the cookies. Uh, it mandates breach notification. This is very important. Um, Within a matter of days. I can't remember. I think it's a couple of days. And privacy by design, which is a concept compelling companies to build privacy protections into their systems from the ground up. It does apply, serious penalties. Amazon fined 887 million 3 or 4 years ago. Meta 1.3 billion in 2023, and Google 166 million in France. So that sends a message. Now, if we have that in the US, can you imagine the amounts of penalties if we were to enact it and enforce it that would be levied on the big tech, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and the others? I think it would be transformative, and I think it would be wonderful. I think that big tech wants us to think we cannot reclaim our privacy. They are banking on that. And that is in part why we need cyber citizens who are hopeful that everything they do can help collectively to send a message to big tech that no, uh, privacy is not dead. You don't own our data, and we're going to hold you accountable, and you have to be transparent about what you're doing. I wish that would happen here, that we could enact that. And maybe we can if activists and organizations like Electronic Frontier Foundation, my personal favorite, a great website, EFF.org, to go for more hints on how to secure your data and what you can do as activists to really make a dent in big tech's hold on our personal lives.
So I have a few more questions, but I'd appreciate, yes, as Rebecca just did, if you have a question for Heidi, raise your hand so I can get a measure of how many questions there are and use our time as effectively as possible. Oh, good. Look at this. In fact, I'm going to hold back with my questions and get into this um, section of our meeting. So let me start with Rebecca.
Hi, Heidi. Thank you for that. I might have missed it, but I don't know if you mentioned the introduction of the legislation last year for federal privacy law that was supposed to kind of like be the umbrella of the current st patchwork of states privacy regulations that you mentioned. I don't doesn't sound like it's going anywhere here, but is there something we can do to get our at least get our reps to know, we want this and we're watching them. We expect them to protect us.
That's an excellent point. I did not mention that. Um, Measures like that, it's critical for us uh, to make our opinions heard, either by writing directly to your representatives. But I mentioned the Electronic Frontier Foundation. There are several worthy and fabulous groups, I mentioned them in the book, that I regularly go to the EFF website every week just to see like what legislation is coming up. What are they asking, recommending people who care about privacy to do? Articles on privacy related initiatives and technology. Um, I would say find a favorite group that resonates with you. If they have sign-on letters, sign on. But, writing op-eds in local papers, I know it sounds archaic, but I think or letters to the editor after an article's come out. Uh, our voices need to come out in a variety of ways and platforms. So I think if you have a favorite group, if you don't, get one, and once a week, check it and maybe do what their advisory might be suggesting. Because we need to try to bring a little order into the chaotic patchwork of inconsistent and often not up to date technologically privacy laws. That's another thing. The law lags behind uh, in many, many respects. They just haven't been fast enough, including judges who don't know how to use a computer, for example. So we've lagged as technology has progressed so quickly.
Yep. Thank you.
Just as I predicted, we have a curious group. So quick questions or comments and quick answers. Rick.
Heidi, thank you very much. This has been very interesting, especially for me as a communications and social media person for the group. And one thing that I've been thinking about and I've been trying to talk to people about is that I think we as progressives tend to shy away from using the tools of our own oppression against the oppressor, right? So we had this a protest a few months ago at the Tesla dealer in Santa Monica. And one thing that I brought up was that even for something that you would think would be as technologically advanced as Tesla, they have a horrible system that doesn't check anything that you can really take advantage of. I was signing up for test drives under names of I went through the Three Stooges, I went through the cast of Star Trek, each putting them on for an hour test drive that day. So the whole thing was booked up, and so people coming in and wanting to actually buy one weren't able to test. That system was kind of shut down. I want to see if you think that that's an effective way to push it for a consumer to push back against that form of predatory capitalism, and what your thoughts were on that.
Well, Rick, you raise a really great point before I answer that question, and that is that our current president and a lot of right-wing entities are masters at using humor, using memes, making fun of a sort of, I guess, condensing a social issue into a one-liner. The left doesn't know how to do that. We don't use enough humor, in my opinion, and we don't craft sort of succinct messages about whatever our cause is. Instead, we may go on and on about the sort of intellectual background of the illegality of genocide or whatever. All important to have, but not online if you're trying to get your point across. We have to be as clever as others have been. As for that action, I think creativity is also essential. Uh, all different kinds of tactics should be tried until perhaps they are found out. Nothing illegal, of course, but a clever idea like that, why not do it?
John Crampner.
All right, yeah, I really want to thank Heidi for a very thorough, lively, engaging, and important presentation. I want to second her recommendation of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, EFF.org. I use it as my homepage, so I'm always kind of brought up to date on, what they're up to and what they're recommending. Two quick points. One is, to the extent people can discipline themselves to do this, don't use Google as your search engine. There's DuckDuckGo, there's Start Page. There are really good search engines that are not 100% as good, but 99% as good. Secondly, and this is a little awkward because it involves tutting our presenter, in terms of email, Gmail is one of the worst, absolute worst. And again, here I would recommend something like Start Mail or Proton Mail. You have to pay like $5 or $6 a month, but it's worth it in terms of privacy. Finally, you do not have to consent to have your picture taken by TSA at the airport. I'll post a few points on that. Sorry for the tutting and thank you very much.
I completely agree. Yeah, I can't defend Google Gmail.
Dave Clennon.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you, Steve, for doing so much homework so that you could ask such pertinent questions. That really means a lot, and I'm tempted to turn over my time to you to ask one more question, but I'm not that generous. So I have a question about something that came up in your presentation, and that is the word disinformation. Disinformation. It's a concept that I have some trouble with because the disinformation, take a given text and ask if this text includes disinformation. And I think it's very difficult to I don't know. People in power may have the ability to define disinformation and filter it out. But we have this whole world of social network information, podcasting, opinions. I express opinions on Facebook. And there is, I think, a paternalistic or even more insidious tendency to screen out opinions that are unacceptable to the powers that be. And the intention is supposedly benign. We don't want our citizens, our voters, to be swayed by what we define as disinformation. And my point of view on this is let the viewer, the citizen, use their own common sense. People have been deluged with various controversial points of view, some really scurrilous, from the birth of this country and before.
Right.
People pass out a leaflet, pass out a flyer in 1776. It could be total bullshit, but you're allowed to do that. And maybe Benjamin Franklin would print that flyer. Who knows? So I just I guess I want to ask our guest, how does how do the police of the internet define disinformation? Who has the power to define disinformation? I don't. I'm appalled by the crisis actor scenario. That's very sinister from my point of view. But may I be allowed to decide for myself if a crisis actor scenario is real or not? Yeah, I think
Good.
that's all.
Excellent, Dave. Heidi.
Yeah, Steve, you may be better positioned to answer this. I mean, this is a really important question. I look at it as, and I did a quick search on my iPhone. Artificial intelligence defines disinformation as the deliberate spread of false or misleading info with the intention to deceive. Now, yes, we all have the right to put on a social media platform false or misleading information. I think I think the problem is when we haven't trained our young people and others how to learn to distinguish false or misleading information when they are, for example, doing a research paper, or they're just starting in their classes to look something up online. That's where digital media literacy comes in, is the ability to know how to check other sources to sort of attempt to get at a more balanced answer of whatever the issue is. So I think, look, censorship is a real concern online, and that harms democracy, of course, in many ways. I just think we need the skills imparted to all users on how to learn how to wade through the morass of information, some blatantly false, some that needs verification.
Dave, you've put your finger on such an important question. First of all, your compliment at the beginning is very kind, but Heidi and I had a run through on this because I interviewed her for Law and Disorder, and many of my good questions came from a collaboration with her.
I'm grateful.
Secondly, there's never been a better statement than Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who said, "We are all entitled to our own opinions. We're not entitled to our own facts." And the kind of literacy that you're recommending, empowering people. I grew up being told not to trust everything you read in the newspaper. Remember that phrase? Absolutely, in spades, it applies to social media. And it's a whole additional program, and I bet Heidi's book addresses it. She talks about cyber literacy. It's just critical thinking and training ourselves and our young people to apply those skills, thereby avoiding government censorship and big brotherism, which is crucial. So let's take our last two questions. Carol Francis.
Oh, yes, thank you very much. I was not surprised at all when I read what you said about different generations knowing civics and my generation coming out better than millennials. Well, my generation learned civics, right? I was a teacher in Watts and Compton, and they eliminated not only civics, but history and geography and science and health. reading, writing, and arithmetic literally was all we were allowed to do, plus English, just a second language if we had English language learners. But as a teacher, particularly as a teacher in Watson Compton, I discovered that the mind of a 10-year-old is the most amazing, undervalued marvel of the world. And 9-year-olds sometimes. And so I'm thinking, how do we use the web, excuse me, the internet to get information not only about computer literacy, but how to discern when you're being lied to for 10-year-olds. And I think they would love it because I would throw out things like this, and my kids would just like fifth graders would just like, a fourth grader. It's just like, Anna, I can't believe you said that. I wish everybody in the world were up to your level.
Right.
Well, I think the good news is that many schools, many nonprofit organizations are realizing this education has to start early on. And I've looked at a few sites online where they actually had a video of some of the classroom exercises by grade. And, what fun to sort of be presented at one teacher went through a website that had some hate messages on it, but disguised. And I think kids love nothing more than being a detective, and that there are engaging, interactive ways that many providers are starting to incorporate into their classrooms. Um, and yeah, I recommend at the end sort of some fun things that parents can do at home with children to start acclimating them to, the threats online, but also fun ways to compare a site or two, but to look for sort of coded messaging and things like that. I think it's developing more rapidly.
Excellent. We're going to use a device now. We'll take two questions in order immediately. And Heidi, if you would take notes or then respond to both questions in one swallow. Anthony.
Well, I want to thank you, Heidi. I was struck at like Carol Francis with the fact that about a third of Americans could pass a citizenship test, but then everybody who becomes a citizen has to pass the test. So naturalized citizens are actually better informed and better equipped. My thought passed through my mind that maybe elected officials should be required to take this test, and perhaps also to graduate from high school, you need to pass this test. That's just an observation. I think one thing that something I'd love to see though. I think the other thing is, what about foreign actors who are trying to influence our elections? We know from recent news reports about what happened with the Russians trying to influence our elections. What can we do or should do to protect our elections from foreign interference?
And Heidi, what I wanted to say was just basically a statement that I think some of us in the progressive movement in Southern California saw that one of our favorite people got hacked last week, and there was a whole bunch of stuff that came out. I actually had to take some stuff out of our group chat. So I think as far as the house cleaning we can do internally, it's kind of like a measure twice, at least cut once type of thing where check it out. Is it absolutely necessary? Is it endemic to everybody? You're taking the time of somebody who's very busy? Is it something that is absolutely necessary for them to know? Put all that into context, and then if it hits all those criteria, then hit send.
The issue of foreign interference with elections is very frightening, I think. And it's real. Even though some people deny that, but I think from what I've read, it seems to be backed up. I think that one way to deal with that is to counter things that you may see. For example, I think it was there was an offensive comment about Hillary years ago, and some lies spread. Well, we can go online and in a short answer, dispel that, hopefully with a fact. Um, it sounds like a little thing, but I think that if everyone, when I see stuff like that, I just get rid of it on my screen. But, you don't want to engage in a whole back and forth, but sometimes facts, speak more loudly. I think, yeah, it's a tricky question. I think if we knew the answer, we would be reducing that. But I think that not only citizens, but government officials, the media plays a role in this. And I think the media has enormous power to counter claims like that. Maybe even, writing articles, posting a screenshot and saying, blah, blah, this is not true, XYZ. Um, that's a heavy question. But I think that countering things as soon as they appear on your feed is one beginning. I don't really have a great answer for that.
Well, Heidi, as you and I want to say thank you for being with us on our Friday forum. How can I just went to your website so I could say this with some authority. Heidi Boghosian simply put it into DuckDuckGo, and you can find Heidi's website. Tell us more, though, about finding your work, following up. And I want to sneak in a question. Who are our friends in Congress, in either the House or Senate? Do you think there are people who understand the issues we've spent the morning discussing, who may be allies in thoughtful policies and legislation that are still consistent with the Constitution, the First Amendment? Justice Brandeis rejected censorship by government. He said more speech, not less speech. In everything we've talked about today, all of us can't be lazy. We've got to use our freedom of expression. Respectfully respond to your crazy uncle, whether it's over the dinner table or on social media. I know we can all go down the quagmire and the rat holes of those conversations, but I think there are ways we can talk to people that elevate at least known facts or a consensus around facts, and then not suppressing different viewpoints. We've all got a lot to learn. John Crampner's put a few thoughts in the chat that we all have to take seriously. So, learning more about your work, and do we have any allies in Congress?
Thank you, Steve. I don't really post much on social media, but trying to promote the book, I'm on LinkedIn, and I have an account that I've posted, I think twice to on Blue Sky. I have a Facebook account, but I don't use it. So I think the best way would be to go to my website, HeidiBoghosian.com, because I will start posting more on that. Ron Wyden was the first name that came to mind because I've mentioned him and others in the book. But I just saw press release from 2 days ago, Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon today unanimously passed legislation requiring the release of an unclassified report containing important details about U.S. telephone network security. So, if people go on DuckDuckGo and search for other representatives, there are many who are working over the years to try to get stronger privacy legislation passed, and technology legislation. But yeah, it's great to stay current on the news about those who are working on our behalf in leadership to protect us all.
Well, Heidi, thank you so much. Uh, in terms of housekeeping, Dick Bunce, if you can gather your thoughts to give us some closing comments at the end of our circle, if you nod in agreement. Heidi, most of everybody on this screen knows that at this moment, I bestow on our speakers that you are now a card-carrying member of ICUJP. Your lifetime membership is fully paid. You are welcome to join us every Friday morning. It's a little more civilized back in New York to join at 10:30 in the morning, and you will get these announcements regularly. We're grateful for the work you do every day. I know it close up. Please go to Heidi's website. I've been scrolling. There are sections on her articles, her book, an interview with Bill Moyers of blessed memory. Please do something that's kind to others this weekend and this coming week, and be kind to yourself. I cannot recall a time of greater stress, of seeing people that are feeling despair and hopelessness because of the cruelty of what's going on through this administration. And the antidote to all of that is what we've done for the last 2 hours together, what we're going to do every time we gather. And I hope you take the knowledge and the compassion of today's presentation into whatever you do this weekend and this coming week. And we welcome you back next Friday. Thank you.